Hello and welcome to Story X Story, the podcast by Mayamada that dives deep into stories across pop culture, plus gives you advice on creating your own. It's episode 204, and I am your co-host Nigel.
I am Tazziii, content creator and co-host.
And for our behind the story episodes, even this far into season 7 now, we still like to talk to creative professionals and practitioners across industries to unpack their journey. And today we are going to hear the story behind Alexis Trust, marketing and publishing product lead at Chucklefish. Alexis, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be here for, what did you say, 207?
This is 204. I don't know why I had to remember that. I just said it. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of episodes.
That is a lot of episodes. I was thinking the same thing.
Glad to be here, though. Cool.
So yeah, we're keeping this thing going.
Yeah, well done.
Appreciate it. Wow, that's the end of the episode. See you guys. That's what I came here for.
That's a wrap.
Yeah, what else do we need to talk about? I think we captured it, really. Efficiency, I love it. So you can subscribe to Story X Story wherever you get your podcast from, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also send us your feedback and questions in a variety of ways. We have the ability to send us a voice message on our Spotify for Podcasters page. You can email us studio77@mayamada.com or on social media, and I've got all of them together now. So we are Mayamada on Twitter, Mayamada TV on Instagram and TikTok, Mayamada.com on Blue Sky. I did the whole domain thing, so that's cool. Or Life of a W Gamer on Instagram and TikTok, and Tazziii on everything else, including tazziii.bsky.social on Blue Sky. So you got some options there.
I need to sort my one out. I told you how to do it and then didn't
do
it myself.
Tazzii's like, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. The instructions were good. So okay, I'll wait for you to do that. Then I'll update the intro again. We're also working on a new website. It's been a long time in the making, as many things that we are doing are in the making, but you can go to mayamada.com and then you can I've basically taken down the previous website and some other stuff as well, and you can at least see the whole of what we do in terms of like the different pillars and the comics and the work experience and the events and all that, the campaign. And yeah, we are working on a new website. You can also join the Studio 77 Discord, which we are also going to revamp, whatever the phrase is. So that's one of the things that we're going to be working on this year, just getting the website, the community going again. So yeah, jump on both of those, check those out, and then expect them to change in some predetermined time. Let me not put too specific a date of it just yet. So before we get to learn more about our guests, let's update you with the latest from the Mayamada universe. And on that Mayamada.com, you can pre-order our latest manga, Origins Against All Odds. So this is the new because you haven't seen it. I've been staring at it for years. But this is the project that we kickstarted last year. Very grateful to our patient backers for making that happen and sticking with us in the extended production process. But yeah, it's looking good. So it's the first from what will be the Origins line of Mayamada stories. So this one sees the real life characters that we've turned into anthropomorphic characters in the Mayamada universe. And then my goal is to do a story about each of them, including myself at some point, about how they got to the Mayamada universe. So kind of doing the Nick Fury Avengers Initiative, the Mayamada Initiative, or I should have called it Mayamada Initiative. Oh, damn. It's done. It's done now. It's the covers and everything. Anyway, so we're starting with Tazziii, which will be a story that is a reflective, hope-filled manga about pursuing your creative career goals in the face of resistance and doubters in the world around you. So I hope when it is out that people sort of resonate with it, depending on what stage of the journey you're at, you can see something in it. And yeah, look forward to actually people getting it, especially the backers and everyone else as well. So you can pre-order that at mayamada.com. And when we get the new website done, we'll have all of our other manga titles available as well. A new year sees a new Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign. So the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign is about promoting inclusion and diversity in the video games industry. So each year we take a new snapshot of 40 players and makers to showcase representation that does exist and help inspire more of it in future generations of talent. So at the moment we are working on the photo shoot, so that we start each year, each campaign with that. So we're working on plans for that. You can go to the campaign website, looklikeagamer.com, and potentially be part of the 40. We've got, well, depending on when you listen to this, we may have some spaces. So we're looking to take photos in London and in the north of England. Exactly where should be confirmed by the time this comes out, but we'll say the north for now. And then, we go into our events. So we had some really cool events, networking events, roundtable events, game jam events, things that are freely available to attend. And the idea is to get people closer to the industry and as a first point, believing they can be in this industry, in this culture, and where needed, show people the steps to it. So all in good fun and all for good purpose about making this industry more inclusive. We also do a lot on Twitch. So we have our Studio 77 activities. It's our digital platform on our Twitch channel where we host different shows with creative professionals and also play games for your amusement. So each month you can enjoy different shows, including the Studio 77 report. I do one, casual conversations with comic creators, and then we get together with our community for games night. So all different type of shows. Make sure you are following My Matter on Twitch to catch each one. We recently did the first games night of this year on Marvel Rivals, which is a cool game. Yeah, it feels better than it needs to be. So we do different types of games each month. So definitely join us for those. And if you are a young aspiring creative professional or you know one, then check out our Showrunners Work Experience and Personal Development Program. So this is something we have created opportunities for people who are age 16 and up to work with our team across comic production, events, and content creation. So the idea is to gain that meaningful work experience that can set you on your way in your creative career. So we've got a couple people working with us at the moment for our program. And as we get into the summer and or the spring and the summer and the rest of the year, we'll have opportunities for our events too. So you can email us showrunners@mymatter.com to find out more about that. And that's where we are in this early part of the year. I don't want to do the whole it's February or already, where did the time go? But still early. So definitely lots more to come. Now let's go behind the story with today's guest.
So joining us today is Alexis Trust, who is an experienced marketing and publishing professional, currently at independent publisher and developer Chucklefish. Alexis has worked on a variety of award-winning indie and AAA titles and led successful community and public relations initiatives for companies such as Xbox, EA, and Samsung. In addition to their professional work, Alexis is also a mentor and has collaborated with the BBC to promote the games industry to schoolchildren. So if you are a regular listener of the podcast, you will know that creativity is important to us. But we want to know what creativity means to you.
Ooh, important one, I think. I think the natural flow of ideas, so everything that's just going on in your noggin, and you just let your mind wander and you see where it takes you, and you put it down on paper, you get it out in music, you make games, tapping into that raw, unfiltered part of yourself and just expressing it in any way that feels kind of right for you, really. It's less about the product and what you make, but more about the journey and how you get there. Enjoying that experience of creating, I think, is key.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your version of what creativity is. I really love hearing everyone's idea of creativity. So, Chucklefish recently showed the trailer for Kyora at the Game Awards last year. What was the experience for you as an indie publisher?
Oh God. So Kiora. So the developers are up in Sweden. They made a Core Keeper before. They're making Kiora now. They're also working on Kiora side by side. Their studio's kind of split into two at the moment, so they're still working on both games. That announcement was kind of a bit bizarre, actually, because every twice a year I get an email from Jeff Keighley that's like, "Do you have anything?" And it's just one line. It's not like a "Hello, how are you?" It's like one line. "Have you got anything this year?"
I get that same email from Jeff.
Yeah.
It's like every time I have to disappoint him. But
Oh. It's something I found that happens with like the higher up in your company you are, the less words you use in your emails. They're always like really
yeah,
truncated, like no hi or hello. Just have you got anything this year? So we got that email as we always get, and then we usually send him everything that we've got coming out that year. We try and take our chances because like I'm sure people in the industry know that getting on the Game Awards is super expensive, especially if you're like trying to vie for that like AAA slot. In the main show. So we were actually only on the pre-show, but still awesome. Very cool to see our game up there. We anticipated that it would probably cost quite a bit of money, but we just hoped and prayed. We didn't say anything. We just kept our mouth shut, and then nobody handed us a bill, so that was quite nice. Initially, as well, we actually made a big mistake. We told them that we'd be doing 30 seconds, or they said, "Oh, we've probably got about 30 seconds worth of footage," and then we delivered a minute, thinking that that was our target. For some reason, somewhere in a document, it said 1 minute, and then when we delivered it, they were like, "I thought this was supposed to be a minute. Sorry, 30 seconds." We were like, "Uh-oh." So yeah, that's how many ways it can possibly slightly maybe go wrong. It was good though. It was cool, and I think the team are really happy. I think we came out of that entire show the fourth most wishlisted and fifth most followed game, despite the fact that we weren't in the main show. And this was like an announcement out of the blue. It wasn't like a sequel or anything, so people really weren't anticipating that this was coming. It was quite cool.
Ooh, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
So happy that the game got so much wish lists. We love that. We love to hear it.
Yeah, me too.
So super exciting, but we want to know where you started out. So would you be able to tell us where you grew up and when you discovered video games as a passion and then a profession?
Sure. So for a little bit of context, I grew up in a council estate in North Wales, which I've just actually gotten back from today. Went up to see my mum and then travelled back down. So our access to video games was actually quite limited. So I am 34 now. I had to think about that. 34. So our first console in house was always a couple of years out of date because it would inevitably be secondhand or like passed down from like some other family member or fell off the back of a van kind of thing. Broadly, and I'm not condoning this, my experience with video games growing up was largely through pirating. I owe quite a lot of my gaming back catalogue to being, having access to games in the first place. Though, it was a lot more difficult back then because you couldn't just log in and download a game. I had to have that physical disc, unfortunately. I think rather than my first gaming experience, because I'm actually not too sure what that is, one that kind of stands out for me, because I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers, come from a pretty big family. I remember playing games with my sister, and she, at the time, this is before memory cards existed, you had like a password system on the PlayStation 1, where as long as you had the password, you could go back to whatever part in the level that you were. It was for Rayman. And we didn't have a pen and paper at the time, so she made me stare at the screen and remember the password. And to this day, I still remember it. It's Rayman 1, and you can punch this in and you get as far as we did. It was LOD TV4 VSP, and you will go to where we were when we were children.
Oh, that is like so sweet. In a weird kind of sweet, because you have to like
Yeah.
stare at the screen, but
I really got to play as a kid. I had to just like watch my sister play, and then is it my turn yet? No, not at all.
Did you ever have the controller that isn't plugged in?
No, because we only had one controller for a really long time. It wasn't until we got an N64, I think, that we then actually had like multiplayer controller access, which was good.
Maybe that's a good thing. I had the whole pretend that I was playing thing.
How long did that work for though? Like, do you get to like a certain age and then?
I don't know. I started playing video games really young.
I see. When kids get to that age where they know that Santa isn't real, but they're kind of also in on the fact that he's not real, and they're just pretending because they don't want to hurt their parents' feelings. Yeah, they benefit massively.
Just keep the scam going.
No, I think I pretty much just waited for my sister to like not be in the house, and then I would play.
That makes sense. Yeah, when is it my turn on the PC?
Yeah, awesome. And like that was sort of like when you realized you really liked video games. When did it become the idea of like it being a profession?
Do you know what? So in high school, I used to love this game called Dark Cloud that was on PlayStation 2. and it had so many like weird little bugs in it that I would write physical bug reports. And I didn't really realize that gaming was like QA was like a real job at that point. I think I would have been like 12, 13, maybe a little bit younger. And I was writing these like reports, and I would try to send them off to the developers, which are level 5. They make like a Ni no Kuni games. So but even back then, I was like kind of weirdly trying to, I don't know, get in contact with like this game developer, but I genuinely didn't realize it was like a profession that you could go into. Obviously, somewhere in the back of my head, I was like, someone makes these and they're professionals. But nowhere during my high school career, or even younger, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a game developer. It was always like, oh, you have to work in a bakery or become a doctor, or the real traditional vacation. I think it wasn't until I was maybe I went to Eurogamer. I went to EGX back when it was in the Earl's Court, and it was an absolutely massive like event, and all the lights were down, and there was all these game pods, and it was super cool. And then I saw, I want to say Sarah Wellick. I don't know if you know her. She's a community manager. She's like a fellow marketer. I saw Sarah Wellick for the first Batman game coming out of Rocksteady, and she was on stage and she was presenting, and I just thought, wow, who is this like woman? She's super colourful and like just doing like the most amazing thing on stage. Does she work for the company? And da da da. And I kind of ended up Googling her and what she did, and I realized, oh, she's a community manager for this like cool game. How do I do that? And I think at that point, even this was like during a transition period online where people didn't necessarily have community managers at all. So it was still in its like infancy, and you could really get in on a company early and just tell them what that role looks like, and they will take your word for it, I guess, because you're the young person who's into social media and you understand what it means to be online. I think this would have been like 2011 even. It's quite early.
Cool. It's cool that you like sort of started doing a job before you knew it was a job. Like just your young self just there QAing.
I genuinely didn't know that was a thing. I was just like, this thing's wrong with this game, and I need them to know that so they can fix it if they ever make a reprint. Like, it's very like strident. There we go, strident in my anger towards the bugs in that game.
Yeah. So you said you didn't really know there's a profession like in your secondary school days. So did you like go on to like university and study anything related to gaming or marketing?
No. So when I was 15, I signed up to the British Army, and I joined there for 3.5 years. So I came out when I was 19 years old, I think just before my 20th. And whilst I was there, I was doing like almost like a gaming club. And I'd gotten in contact with Graham Boyd, who I think at the time was like a EMEA marketing guy for Xbox at the time. And I remember seeing him at an event or something. Sorry, I'm not too sure. I can't recall. But I remember seeing him, meeting him, and emailing him or sending him a letter at the time saying like, hey, we're kind of bored over here. Is there any like spare equipment? Can you send some stuff over? Expecting him to fully send over like old equipment and like not great. And he was like, oh yeah, cool, and sent like brand new stuff, and just was awesome. It was really helpful, and it was a good connection to make before I came out. I did eventually go on to like work with him later down the line, but as I was coming out, I realized that I'd been running these gaming tournaments and working with a company called WGL, who at the time, who are now Gfinity. You might know them as like a news organization, but at the time they used to be World Gaming League. Super cool, right? A Warp Gaming League, actually. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, I was doing the community management, but not really thinking about it. I think I'm user like 20 something maybe in the back end, which is really strange because I went on to work with Gfinity later on when they were Gfinity and back on the stock market. And I logged in using my old user, and it was just right there. It was like, oh yeah, you're user number 20 out of 300,000 or something. But yeah, I basically taught them what community management was, because just from guessing about little pieces I could find online, because there was no like best practice. Yeah, sorry, back to formal education as well. No, I've got nothing. I don't have any GCSEs. I tried to do a degree in marketing and didn't really get very far. I realised that whilst I was doing the degree, that a lot of the things that they were teaching me I've already done, or was just incredibly irrelevant to the job in games that I wanted. So I realised that this is a waste of my time and money. I could probably learn these just by doing it, kind of thing. And then I did.
Awesome. So with your like family, did they know anything about what you do? Do they understand it? Were they encouraging?
Not in the slightest. Oh my god, no. My mum's been quite hands off with with the parenting because there was just so many siblings that you didn't really need to, and I was one of the youngest. So she didn't really know kind of what I was up to in my day to day when I was a bit younger. But then as I came out of the army, she burst into my bedroom at the time because I had to move back in with her, unfortunately. She burst into my bedroom and I must have been playing like Call of Duty or something. She ripped the cable out the wall and she's like, "You'll never get a job playing video games." And I then later down the line went on to work for Sega doing their QA, and my first paycheck that came in, I sent a picture of it to her with the caption like, "Never get a job playing video games, huh?" So it was quite like a bittersweet moment. I think she gets it now, sort of. I think she thinks I still work for Xbox, which isn't great because that's what she tells her friends. It's really sweet though. It's gone from being like, I'm largely ignorant of this thing and I don't really care, to like active pride, but maybe not quite in the right thing.
Yeah. Heart's in the right place now, at least.
Yeah. The attitude's definitely changed. I think at the time she was just like, video games are stupid, and now I've got two very awesome nieces, and one of them codes and the other one makes art, and they're in university together and they make games and stuff, and they're just really cool. So I think her seeing how excited and like the career path that I've gone on, she feels a little bit more comfortable about them and what they're going to do in their future.
Yeah, that's like a very interesting journey. I'm glad it had like a happy ending, if
Oh yeah,
not
definitely.
misinformed. But and so you said about like joining the army for a bit. How did that come about? Like, what spurred you to go in that direction?
Oh, so my mum was in the RAF for a bit, and then my dad was in the army. So it was like there wasn't like a choice. You're not going to go on to do A levels or anything. It was just kind of like, oh well, I guess you're going to go do this then. And your pea brain at 15 is like, okay, I guess I will. I don't know. There wasn't like an extensive conversation about it. It was just kind of just decided, and then I did it.
That makes sense. And do you feel like any of that experience like has shaped you or contributed to knowledge that you have today?
I think so because so I was in Intel Core doing communications, so I think it definitely had some, I guess, bleeding edges into video games and community management and PR, especially because when you're that young, managing your behavior and like reframing yourself in front of different crowds and especially older people was quite helpful coming out because I suddenly felt very young and small and idiotic, and I kind of came out feeling a bit like, oh, all these people have degrees and I'm competing against them to get a role and they've trained in it where I really haven't. And I think it gave me the edge that actually I was a little bit more confident in speaking about myself, speaking about my expertise, and like just generally speaking to adults as well. I say adults, you're an adult at 19, but
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I don't think you're an adult at 19.
no, definitely not. I feel like at the time you really feel really mature. Like I know everything. I know the world inside out.
Yeah. Yeah, the attitude at 19 is wild. So what would you say is some of the best advice someone else gave you when you were starting out? And did you follow it?
Ooh, here's the problem. So, because like I said, when I joined and the things I was doing, I was helping pioneer it. I was trying to find best practice with the rest of everybody else. So nobody could really give me any advice. I never had any mentors. The managers I did have were it was usually through like agencies, and I don't know if you know agency people very well, but they're kind of usually privately educated and quite money driven. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them are. So I feel like the lessons I took away from older people have kind of been more passive than, oh, when you get to this age, you need to think about this and da da da. And I think that's why I ended up doing so much mentoring because I always wanted to be the person I needed when I was coming through my career because I made so many mistakes and did stupid things and said silly things along the way. And I think I would have definitely avoided a lot of those mistakes had I had someone to just have a sounding board and talk to. But yeah, sorry, I don't have any advice that someone gave me.
That's absolutely fine. So you kind of described a bit of a like breakthrough moment, but I want to know if there's any more breakthrough moments that you had in games that were kind of like the moment that you went like, I work in games now, like this is real.
Oh yeah, I keep having them. I genuinely keep having them. There's a bunch of So I was a senior community manager when the Xbox One was launching, which admittedly probably one of
That's
my
the
most
Xbox ONE, not the first Xbox, just to
yeah
clarify.
yeah, that
Just in
one, the
case people.
2013. Yeah, I think quite a tall task at the time, because obviously when you're doing community management, it's not you're not in charge of any of the decisions that are happening behind closed doors, but you're kind of facing the repercussions of that. It was I want to say Gamescom or E3. No, it would have been E3. And Phil Spencer was on stage, and I was doing like sentiment reporting. And basically, before he went on stage, we ran this for context. A sentiment report, for anyone listening, is like a report that listens to conversations that are happening online, and then it sifts to figure out what's positive, what's neutral, and what's negative. So a lot of what was coming out at the time was quite because it was very like Sony versus Xbox, and like PlayStation are gonna kick ass and kind of thing. So it was figuring out what those conversations were, where people were having them, and is there anything we could do about that? Like, what learnings do we have? So I delivered a sentiment report just before he went on stage, and then one immediately after as he stepped off stage. And the sentiment was like very positive, and he came off, and it was just like, and he said thank you, and he was really grateful for the reporting, and I was just like, oh, I guess I work here now. Like, this is cool. Like, I've made it. I'm good. I think that was the first time. I'm trying to think, when I started working at Chucklefish as well, I felt really like, I don't know, proud to be stepping back from AAA and going into indie, and just feeling like I'm making a choice that I would like to make. I'm working for a company that I've dreamed of working for a really long time, kind of thing. So I think you keep having that like, oh yeah, this is a good decision, and I'm working in games, and this is awesome moment every time you make those steps.
Oh, that's so nice to hear, like, that you keep having them, and that like reassurance is kind of on your whole journey. That's really nice to hear. What was different about being in the industry versus being on the outside?
Hmm. I think because I was working for agents, like I've worked for agencies on and off. So you're technically working for the games company, and you're giving, you're feeding back publishing ideas and development ideas and things. But then you're technically like not part of that company, and it's hard to say you work for that company sometimes. I think it's less awkward these days, but there was definitely moments when I was working on agency side, and I felt a bit like, oh, I don't really work in the games industry. I'm just kind of serving them on the side. I think the biggest difference is I remember going, without calling anyone out, I remember going for an interview at a AAA studio at the same time I was interviewing for Chucklefish. And the guy was like, oh, isn't it going to be great for you to get your first got job in games? And I was like, what? I've worked in games for like 8 years at this point. What? And he was like, yeah, this is the first time that you'll really be in a studio though, right? Like, well, not really. I've worked with studios several years. But he was just adamant that I was not part of the games industry. And I think a big part of that conversation is always like, are you in or out? Are you like a service provider? Do you work for a QA house? Like, does that mean that you're part of games? And like, I think a big conversation in this last 5 years has always been like, someone always likes to stir the pot on Twitter or Blue Sky or wherever now, where they're like, oh, QA aren't really game devs, are they? And you're like, well, the game wouldn't get made if it wasn't for QA. Game wouldn't get, you wouldn't be able to play the game if it wasn't for your marketing and your publishing teams. Like, they still have to do like really important functions to get this game out. I don't know. Less insecure about it now, because obviously it's been years, and I feel like an old granny in the space. But yeah, back then it was very like, oh, feels not good for someone to view me like that. I don't appreciate someone trying to diminish my experience, and I don't know why, and you'll never find out why. So sometimes you just have a negative experience with people who, I don't know, maybe there's like a position of power that they're trying to get over you. It happens.
Yeah, that's a good like I guess like point for anyone getting into the games industry, is like you might be in it and then people will still kind of like gatekeep it.
Absolutely, 100%.
Because there's so many people that work like for an agency or contracted in the games industry, like it's a big part of it. So if that's like the measurement for if you're in it, that's a bit wild.
It's such an insane measurement. Like, I think about like Charlie Hodges, for example. She's community manager for Xbox at the moment. I think she does EMEA and she does Xbox On. So she's been the face
Yeah.
of Xbox for 8 years. But in theory, she works for, I want to say Edelman, which is a PR firm, and not Xbox. But that's just how a lot of these AAA companies tend to work. They don't hire you in house. You're an agency worker. So I worked for EA for a really long time. Did like community and influencer stuff with them, and I just was never like a full-time staff member because they don't want the headcount. Um, and then if they don't like the service, they can just go to another agency, and it's just how it works. And for someone to come along and diminish like your expertise is just very frustrating. And if you do, I don't know, you'll probably find a lot more games jobs, especially in marketing, in the agency side of things. And it's a really good place to cut your teeth as well, because you learn really, really quickly, and you're on different accounts as well. You're not just probably going to be on your gaming account, and it's good to have that like non-endemic experience. So I worked with like Samsung for probably about 6 months, and it was eye-opening just how like another part of tech worked compared to how the gaming world worked. No, it's good experience. I recommend it.
Nice. So I want to say, like, what is something that might surprise players about large companies in video games? Obviously, something that you can talk about.
Ooh. Typically, a lot of the creative decisions are made by 2 or 3 people, and then you've got anywhere between 200 to 1,000 people underneath that trying to lead that creative. And obviously, across that, it's interdisciplinary, and things get lost. And you'll find that the bigger the company gets, the more wastage in terms of art, like work and art and just effort occurs, because naturally you're trying to all work towards this one goal, but it's a lot more difficult when you've got more people. So you've got loads of stuff that just hits the wayside and just goes onto the cutting room floor, basically. Maybe that might be surprising for people, but then that stuff will never see the light of day because it's under NDA, which means that artists don't get to like pad their portfolio. They can't show it publicly. They can't show it privately, even.
Also, like almost like the stuff that doesn't get seen. Because I think a lot of the time, people from the outside, you might think everything you see is everything there is or was. Whereas, like you'll see it, and there might have been like a lot more, and then you don't even see it.
Yeah, I think especially through the concepting, like pre-production phase and things like that, the closest you'll probably see it is like art books. But there's so much work that just gets like, it's kind of sad because there's obviously a lot of creativity that just kind of gets put on the floor a little bit and then never gets seen or used ever again for any reason. But I think it's good. It's really handy for people to hone their skills regardless. So there's positives and negatives to it.
I feel like it's a really good thing for like players to be aware of, is like how much work has gone into it before it's even got to anywhere near the version that has been released. So what led you to join Chucklefish, and how is working in indie titles different than AAA games?
So basically, I saw that their project manager was leaving. Like I saw that she posted on Twitter that she was leaving and that they were replacing her to get in contact. And then I got in contact with Donna Orlowski, who's our COO, and I messaged her privately just to ask if I could come and chat, and just sent her my CV. Turns out she didn't look at my CV, but was just interested in talking to me because I was quite proactive about reaching out, and I'd sent like quite a polite message, which is the first mistake, I fear. So I got there and I was sat on a couch with her, chatting to her, and the rest of the team, the entire team, were having like an all hands training session in a completely different meeting room. So it was just me and Donna. And she was interviewing me for an office manager role, which is not something I do. And for context, for an office manager at Chucklefish, does like the accounts and also does things like stocks the fridge and like deals with guests and plane booking and things. Like they're like a personal assistant, basically. So Donna's interviewing me for this role, and I'm trying to interview for a role that I thought was like a project manager. So it was just a super awkward, very bizarre conversation that we were both having. And then ultimately, she obviously didn't need my expertise. And I kind of sent her, I think, 2 more follow-up messages saying that, I would kick myself if I didn't try, because I think I could do some really cool stuff at Chucklefish. And I think being kind of pushy, but politely pushy, was like such a benefit to me, because she, ended up hiring me in the end. I must admit, I cannot remember the question. I was just engrossed in talking about Donna.
No, that's a really cool story to hear, and like just really interesting of like the different ways that you can land a role, because I think that's something that, especially now, that like people really struggle with. And then so the other part of that question was, how is working with indie titles different from AAA?
Oh, okay. So working through Xbox and working at EA, obviously large companies get yelled at constantly. Like you didn't do this, you suck, go die, blah blah blah, all the horrible things you can imagine, also the nice things, but a lot of horrible stuff. And that just kind of is like water off a duck's back. No one cares. It doesn't feel personal. Whereas when someone is disappointed in like, oh, I found this bug and it's really terrible and it's ruined my gameplay, it actually feels a bit more personal, and you want to really like try your best to like help that person, because your bottom line isn't really I mean, your bottom line's kind of being impacted by it, but it's less about like, if I don't help you, then that's just an extra, $8. Who cares? As opposed to, this is one less person that's going to be like a really good advocate for you and your brand, and like I want to like be more attentive and like help this person. So especially when I was doing community management, which was 5 years ago, I've shifted roles considerably since then. I think at the moment, Chucklefish has 14 games in its back catalogue. So looking after that compared to just FIFA or just The Sims, or I think at the time I was working on Battlefield and Apex, that's kind of odd. I've never had to do more than like 2 or 3 accounts at once, where as opposed to like several. So that's a huge difference. And those communities are so different as well. Like speaking to them with different voices independently has been kind of difficult challenge. It's nicer. I think something kind of cool about Chucklefish as well is that we're entirely independent. So our CEO, our C-suite, CEO, COO, CTO, they're all sat in the room with us. So if the aircon breaks, they feel it, kind of thing. And that, I think, has made it a lot more meaningful. It makes me feel a bit more connected to my work and my workplace. It also means that there's no like suits that mysterious businessmen dictating what we do and when we do it and how we do it as well. Importantly, who we hire and when we hire them. And I've been quite lucky because I think obviously the state of the games industry at the moment is quite fraught. And I've been quite lucky in terms of Chucklefish is quite secure. We capped our staff at 20 people. We're not like growing for growth's sake. We do 4-day working, and like it's a space where people kind of care about each other, and our CEO really tries his best to figure out what we need in the office, and if there's anything you can do to make it better. Like he pays for Deliveroo every Wednesday, which is quite nice. Just little things like that really just make coming into work like less awkward. Like that Monday feeling doesn't really hit you when you've had like a good rest after a 4-day work week, and you don't get the hump day because you've got a lovely delicious treat waiting for you in the middle of the week. So it's just, I don't know, it doesn't feel like work when you're kind of enjoying the process of publishing and talking to community and talking to press, and like it's just cool. I really like it. It's definitely the best games job I've ever had. I'm not just saying that because I work with her right now.
No, that does sound really lovely. Like, I'm such an advocate of like a good working environment and how much that like affects your people.
Yeah, you spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your friends and your partners, and so you want them to be your friends, right? You want them to be like people you're close to, and it feels like that. It's a good space.
Yeah. So you spoke a bit about like changing the tone to fit the different accounts. I'd love to hear more about like what it's like working with lots of different titles rather than that like just one main title.
So when I first started working at Chucklefish, we were still publishing Stardew Valley, which was quite interesting because it meant that like the way that we talk about Stardew Valley was kind of, if I was to talk about it on Twitter, we'd be like concerned apes hit farming sim. That's the wording I think they wanted me to use, because that's just best practice and how they've always done it. So I was also inheriting other people's tones of voice, so I had to like mimic my now boss Katie. So I had to mimic how she was kind of talking about these things, so it felt more natural. But then also we'd get these like new games in. Like Wild Frost, I was a product lead. Didn't necessarily do their social media because I've moved away from community and social, but it meant that I could at least direct the tone of it a little bit more and work with the community manager to find what was right for that game. It does feel a little bit hectic sometimes because there's like the Chucklefish tone of voice in of itself, and then you've got like Wargroove, which is like an internal game, and then the Starbound as well. Starbound tone of voice rather, and they're all kind of distinct to each other, so you can kind of get a little bit of a headache trying to juggle. You have to kind of get into that creative mindset. I know people think that social media is a little bit, it's easy because it's the kind of thing that's so embedded into our natural day-to-day work life, I guess. Like I'm off social media now. That's how out of touch I am. I have no accounts anymore. But back then it was like kind of crazy switching between the couple, because then you'd have different communities. So you'd have like the Starbound community complaining about like a bug or something, and then you'd come back a week later and they'd be like, oh, I really love this thing that you've added, it's amazing. And then you'd go over to the Wargroove community and they'd have like a tournament on and someone might have cheated or something, so there's drama there. And like, so there's always something new, and it's quite exciting and refreshing to have more than one thing. Whereas like, I think when I was working with Xbox, it was like very you can only really talk about Xbox, and it goes through 5 different people before you get it signed off. Whereas this was like, you can own it and it's yours, and like no one's gonna say no, really. Not unless you post something super egregious, I guess. But I never did, luckily. I know, it's cool. It's cool. Oh, that's the word I'd use to describe it.
And so you said like your roles changed quite a bit now because you've sort of moved away from community management. So now you're marketing and publishing product lead. So can you explain a bit more about like what that role is and what it entails?
Yeah. So I do everything that a game needs in order to launch, basically. So sometimes I will represent Chucklefish at events and take pictures of games. So people will ask me, I need this amount of money for this game that I want to make, and if I think it's a cool idea, I'll take it back to the team. If not, I'll gently let them down and try and steer them into a direction, maybe like another publisher. Sometimes I'll look over like legal stuff, including like contracts for our games, just to double check that they're all good. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but it's handy to have a basic understanding of how these contracts work. And then I'll do like due diligence. How many copies does this need to sell, and what price, and who do I need to talk to about this in terms of the media and like influencers, literally everything. Putting the game into the platform backends. It's, when I say it out loud, it sounds very boring, but I actually really like my job. It's like store page copy, all the stuff, everything that isn't talking to players right now. Organizing QA, organizing localization. It's fun seeing like what goes into the pie, basically.
And like, what determines how you balance your time across the different titles that you have?
Depends. So because we're so small, so my team are 5 people, and we only really put about 1 or 2 games out a year. So it's really dependent on its launch window, what's coming up before it, what's getting announced. So we plan that kind of thing out at the beginning of the year, and then I have a general idea of what my day-to-day work is going to look like for the next 6 months, which sounds a bit crazy because games are unpredictable and move constantly because things happen, delays happen. One of our developers has just had a baby, like that was quite unexpected. It's like, so it was, things happen. So it's nice to see what I'm going to be working on for the next 6 months, I guess.
Yeah. And so earlier we talked about the Game Awards, and you've worked on a variety of award-winning indie and AAA titles. What does it mean to you to work on something that wins an award?
Ooh, it's nice. It's genuinely nice. Because our internal games are, for context, we do development as well as publishing. So our internal games, Starbound and Wargroove, and then external are like Eastwood and Wildfrost. It's and Locomotive more recently. That one came out end of last year. It's just won a bunch of awards, but typically I think because the way that the landscape is at the moment, a lot of these award ceremonies tend to be going to digital only, so it's sort of lost a little bit of its sparkle. Like, it was nice going to award ceremonies generally. I went to BAFTA with Eastwood, which was super cool. I'd never been to the BAFTA Awards before, and that was like, I think that was when my mum really like clicked that this was kind of like a big deal, or it could be. She was like, "Oh, I get it now. Like, I understand what the BAFTAs are. I didn't know what the Game Awards were. That might be tiny or big. I don't know. But I get what the BAFTAs is. That sounds fancy."
Jeff is working to change that.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's doing his best with what he's got.
Oh, Jeff.
Hard, yeah. It's just hard to sell games to people that just have no interest in them. A little bit more prestige behind BAFTA. People know what it is, right? Like, it's
Can't compete with BAFTA.
hard comparison to make. It's nice when the devs get nominated for things. Obviously, we celebrate with them. We try and. But Eastwood is a little bit hard because the devs are based in China, and it's quite difficult to get people over just for kind of like a week, one night kind of thing with visas and everything. Even though they have like a perfectly valid reason, I think if they were to, people even trying to get influencers over for EA Game Changers into Germany from like Australia was quite kind of difficult, So visas are usually the big issue.
That's interesting. It's like the what's the word for it? The democracy part of it? Is that the word?
That sounds right.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, that's the one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the rhymes with democracy.
Like, you don't really think about that stuff. You're like, oh yeah, someone's won an award. They're just gonna come and accept it, or like an event or something. It's like, yeah, they're just gonna come. But it's like, oh yeah, there's like visas and arranging things. You can't just like pop over.
Yeah, especially as we see like more. It's interesting seeing like how global politics is unfolding, and all that kind of chaos that's going on out there, and how that reflects in real time to the games development space. Like there's a really wonderful event going on next week, Lithuanian game dev event. It's like for indies to do like pitching their games to publishers and things. And I was talking to a couple of other publishers. They were wondering if it's like worth going because it's Lithuania. It's not like, I don't know, it's not Germany or something where they've got like, in Germany the government will like fund match and things, so it's like more beneficial to sign German games, whereas Lithuania is kind of not really on people's radar too much. And I was like, no, actually it's a really good idea for you to go, because there's loads of like people from Ukraine and Russia, like studios that have just moved to Lithuania because that's where they've been accepted. Like it was a lot harder for them to move to Germany or UK or whatever. So there's a bunch of publishers going to Lithuania next week, and I feel like I push people towards it. Ultimately, it's good. More games, more funding, more opportunities for people.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, it's definitely fascinating. So, what inspired you to start developing your own game alongside your publishing work?
Ooh, Chucklefish. So we have, when we're looking for games, we call it like charming games. So not wholesome, not cozy, charming. So we've got a really, like I like it too. I think it really nails what we're kind of after and what our portfolio is about, because we've got some really lovely, beautiful games that have the cozy and wholesome moments, but they're not cozy, wholesome games. Like Eastwood's got a really strong messaging about like environmental messaging, and Pathway is about killing Nazis in Morocco, but it looks gorgeous and it has those like heartwarming moments in it. I mean, even Stardew Valley, some of the NPCs there, you think that's like the proto cozy game, but I think Shane, one of the characters there, he had substance abuse issues, which they're not shy about, and you talk it through if you go through his dating arc. So like, I like games that have this kind of cute, wholesome veneer, that aren't afraid to have like teeth and talk about real things and things in, relationships that people go through, and how you can handle them possibly, that aren't shy. But even when you've got that kind of like charming, I guess, mantra, there's like a limit to what you can do. So I kind of wanted to, because we're never going to work on a horror game or a FPS, but it just meant that I really wanted to work on something a little bit more, I guess, more in touch with my background about like Wales and like council housing and how those estates operate. And like, that's not the kind of conversation, I don't know, actually I've never really spoken about it with my team, to be honest, but working on something like that isn't necessarily in their wheelhouse just gives you the option to get a little bit more gritty and a little bit more real for me, and more creative, definitely.
Well, that's cool. What has been the biggest learning curve on this game making journey of yours?
I think that the myth of the solo dev. Everyone needs help. I'm so lucky that I've been able to just, like, I talked to my friend who's a level designer at Zaum, and talked to another friend of mine who's like a UX UI designer. He does like AAA games. Like, I've been able to tap into so many different people when I've needed them. Narrative designers, things I would never naturally gravitate to, but then suddenly forced to like confront. I think the biggest challenge has been putting my guards down to be able to ask that, but then B, also like learning so much from these people who are just so amazing and passionate. And to be honest, they've been giving me their time for free as well, and then pointing me in the right direction resource wise. I think if I was like a student and I didn't have access in the way that I have right now, I would really struggle. This is something I reflected on with my mentee, my new mentee that I've got this year, because I just think it must be so difficult right now to try and figure out. There's so much online. Back when I started, I was kind of, not to big myself up, but we were pioneering the kind of stuff that is now best practice within community management. So it was all guesswork, and that was hard, and that was a challenge in itself. But there's so much information now about all these different disciplines that some of it's actually a bit crap and like out of date and not very not very like accessible either, or like is a bit too technical and there's lots of jargon, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. There's like a lot of information, but not necessarily all quality information. Yeah, I feel like it's the double-edged sword of the information age.
Definitely. Just enjoying that learning journey as well. I think if you don't enjoy it, then you've got no chance. I think if it's like hard to do and you're not enjoying the fact that you're learning about it, it just is such a big barrier for you. And I don't think you're ever going to really do it. It's just going to be an idea that's in the back of your mind. You really need to like want it.
Yeah. So what's been the most rewarding aspect of your career so far?
Having the opportunity to talk to students genuinely. I've worked on some cool stuff with some cool people on some cool games. And I think actually I feel my most fulfilled when I'm doing a lecture or I'm chatting to students, because they really are hungry for this stuff. I see why you both, you know, love doing this and you're passionate about this, because it is rewarding.
I just like talking to people who know less than me. It's very ego boosting. You didn't know that? Oh, well, let me tell you about the Xbox 360.
I just love sharing ideas and information and learning about individuals. So
Like I work with Elam occasionally for it's a East London Arts and Music School, and they've got like a game design course there, and just seeing what they
I'm
come up
there on
with, because they
Wednesday.
have these. Oh,
I'm
nice!
there
Yes,
on Wednesday,
have
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, thank you for that, because you're the person who put me in that direction.
Oh, yeah, sweet. I'm so glad you're doing that. They are the best students. They're just so lovely and attentive.
Oh, I'm going to talk at them for an hour and a bit, so that's good to hear.
No, they'll be cool. I think because everything that you say to them is so new, that they're really receptive to it all, and they're quite malleable. And it's been so rewarding, kind of coming in to look at their projects but ahead of time, understanding where their pitfalls are going to be in terms of like, I don't know, perspective or file size, or you know, maybe they haven't quite got their art direction in a place where they want it to be, and how to steer them is just, it's really cool to like come back a couple of weeks later and see that they've like implemented the thing that you told them to,
Mm.
or you know, advised them to look at a certain reference, and they've come back and they've just like improved basically, and it's just a really interesting tangible thing. They're
so
cool.
no, I was just going to say, like, talking about everything you sort of do with students and the mentoring that you do, what do you think are the key non-technical skills that are needed in today's games industry?
Ooh, that's interesting. I have a huge list that I go through with the Elam cohort actually. That's things like my big do's and don'ts of when you go to pitch. And a lot of them are just kind of general things that you could probably take outside of this. Hygiene is a big one. Genuinely, timekeeping, hygiene, no, like being prepared for when you do speak to people, how you speak to them as well, and generally just confidence. Trying to get them to like stand up straight and give a little bit more eye contact and not feel like they're out of breath when they're talking and things. I think practicing just talking and having a conversation with an adult about something that isn't something they're interested in, and feigning interest. I know that sounds kind of fake, but if you can fake being interested in something that you have no interest in, I think that will take you pretty far. Just a general life skill, never mind
Yeah,
games.
Yeah, can attest that. I don't have to fake being interested. I generally am interested in things that people are interested in. Like, even if I have no idea what they're talking about, I'm like, I'm so interested in the fact that you're interested.
Yeah, if someone talks about something they're really passionate about and they're super like into it, it's so much easier to get on board with what they're trying to sell you, or what they're trying to tell you, I guess. Like, it's good
Yeah,
skill time.
definitely. It will open so many doors for sure. That's such a good one, but definitely like some great skills highlighted there. So you're a part of the 2024 Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign, and in your profile you mentioned that art is the answer to everything. What do you mean by that?
So I think when people don't have a creative outlet, their soul is dying. And I know that sounds intense, but I genuinely think that's true. I've met so many people in the last couple of years who do not have a creative outlet, and like they just, and especially the weight of the world right now is so heavy. If you don't have that time where you can just like let your brain wander and be meditative about your creative process, and even if you don't know how that starts, just doodling and things like, you know, like it doesn't need to be, I'm going to be the most amazing artist in the world. It could just be anything, really. Like, I've got a few friends who picked up coding through through the pandemic, and they were like, I'm so surprised at how creative this is. So it's not necessarily like it doesn't have to be like a non-STEM thing, because coding requires you to use your brain, and you can. I've heard people get into flow states with it. My partner is a doctor in the NHS, and he does so much art when he's not working because his job is so stressful and he needs that creative outlet. He's actually playing Skyrim in the room with me right now. I'm watching him play. And it's interesting when I talk to other doctors, other medics, and they say that they don't have any creative outlet at all. And I wonder what they do with their kind of spare time. And I guess they spend time with friends and family, but I can tell that like there's something missing. And so when I mean it's kind of the answer to everything. It's just like if everybody had something where they could express themselves in a way that was like healthy via their art, I think the world would definitely be a better place.
Have you by any chance read The War of Art?
No.
I think you would really enjoy it because it kind of talks about that big time, and also a book called Big Magic.
I'm writing these down.
Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy them because they both sort of talk about like that need for creative outlet, whether that is like as a hobby or as a career, but you just need to do something that is for your soul. Yeah, definitely The War of Art is like a very well-known book.
Yeah, it's on my list.
Yeah, I highly recommend. Highly recommend.
Cool, I'll get on it. I typically only read nonfiction, so
yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. Let me know what you think of them when you do read them. I actually need to read The War of Art again. I feel like it's one of those ones that you should read regularly just to remind yourself.
I have a few video essays on YouTube about creativity that I go back to every month or so just to re-jog that like little spark that those things give you. So yeah, I understand why you'd want to reread it.
Yeah, I'd love to get those as well. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing them with me after the podcast.
No, I will. I recommend CJDX for anyone listening. They have amazing. They've got one called the 7 Deadly Sins of Art, and it's just really inspiring. I've had it like downloaded offline on my phone since it came out, and I go back to it when I'm on my walks. Just really like listening to them talk about, what it means to hide away and why you shouldn't do that. And it's really good. I'll send you a link.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so we're still coming to the end of this section. So we're all protagonists in our own stories, and every good protagonist has a goal and a vision of success. So what does success look like to you, and are you there yet?
Ooh, I don't think there's like an end point to success. So for me, it's less about the big milestones and more about the process of getting to the goals that you're making. And that process is the successful part. Because even if you're failing, you're still getting one step closer to where you want to be or what you want to do. And it always helps you. It's enjoying the journey, growing as a person, feeling connected to the people and the passions that kind of matter to you. That's the successful part. I think waking up excited for the day and going to bed and feeling content.
That is a really lovely, wholesome answer. I feel like I need to take that on a bit as a bit of a mantra. In each interview, we ask our guests to give advice for aspiring creative professionals. We've been talking games. So what advice do you have for other listeners who may want to get started with creating their own games or getting into the games industry?
All right. So my biggest piece of advice is fake it until you make it. Genuinely. I don't mean like lying or telling people you can promise X and then not be able to deliver. I mean, within your means, when you say that you want to be a games developer or a writer or whoever it is, you embody what that means. So you make the games, you write, regardless of if you're doing it professionally or not, you're still a writer, you're still creative, and you're still an artist. And if you keep working towards that, you will eventually break in. I think meritocracy is a lie. However, you can still do what's right by yourself by remaining true to your creative spirit and keep pushing for it. And the worst thing that anybody could do is ignore you, really, if you reach out. I'm a huge fan of just emailing people out of the blue and asking them if they've got any work, or if they, especially if a piece of their art really touched you, just emailing them and telling them, I really enjoyed this, so thank you so much. Just being polite, saying, you can share a little bit about yourself, say the art in Disco Elysium was amazing. I want to tell you just how much it touched me. I'm also an artist myself. Thank you for inspiring me. I've done this and this and this, and just making those connections early rather than keeping that like love and happiness that you have for other people's work inside you, just sharing it. I think that goes a long way as well.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It's very similar to a conversation I was having the other day. People don't know that you appreciate it. So letting them know is just going to be such
Like,
a.
game devs get so many negative comments, and those are the ones that you go to bed meditating on occasionally. So
Yeah.
to get a personal message that maybe isn't a tweet or is an email or whatever, it's really nice. I've had a few over the years, and they've just like I've opened them up in the morning, and they've made my day, and then they make the day better. Spread a little happiness and positivity around the world.
So lovely. Yeah, thank you for that great guest tip. So, listeners, we'd love to hear your feedback on the interview, and you can let us know what you think by emailing studio77@mymatter.com and telling us how great we are. And so, we're going to go into some bonus questions now, our little bonus round.
This is the part where we throw in follow-up questions or random things that don't quite fit anywhere else. Actually, I'll just start with adding my own book suggestion, just because I didn't want to seem like I'm illiterate. But there's so Rick Rubin, a record producer, has a book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, which I haven't actually read, but I've listened to Rick Rubin in different interviews, including one with Kendrick Lamar, which is an interesting discussion. But he's got this like, I don't know. So for those who
It's
don't know,
huge.
yeah, is because
It's a
Rick Rubin's,
massive text. Yeah, it's huge.
he's like I don't know, like him, I don't know, Quincy Jones. They're just like the record producers of record producers. They've worked with everyone. Whatever genre of music you like, you probably worked with big people, but he just got this like spiritual aspect to it. So it depends if that's the kind of thing you like to take in. But he just, for whenever I see him talk on like interviews, just comes across very, he's coming at it from a different perspective, and he's done a lot in his life. So you can't help but I learn from something when I hear him talk. So that's another one that's on my list. So I just thought to throw that in
What
there.
did you say the name of it was?
So Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, A Way of Being.
The Creative Act, A Way of Being. Cool.
I also second that recommendation. Rick Rubin has a lovely, brilliant, beautiful mind.
Yeah.
His approach to
I get that
creativity
impression.
is so good. He's a little bit crackpot in that book.
Okay, I get that impression. Because whenever I've seen him in an interview, he's not wearing shoes. So he reminds me of like that Steve Jobs of the 80s and before they shipped him out the first time from Apple because he wouldn't wash.
There's a part in, not to go off piece too much, but there's a part in the book where Rick Rubin has a lot of like abdominal pain, and he goes to the hospital and they tell him that his appendix is about to burst and he needs to get it removed. And then he says he's going to meditate on it and leaves, and goes into a bookstore, opens and like picks a random book and opens it up to a page from a completely random writer who tells him that they shouldn't allow other people to remove your organs if you feel that you need them. So he decided not to get his appendix removed. So there's little weird bits like that in it,
Okay.
but it's interesting how he approaches. He's like, I approach this as like a creative decision rather than a life decision, because creativity runs everything.
I need to listen. I'm probably get the audiobook and listen to it, but definitely one that I need to consume.
So there you go. So I was a couple of things I was going to ask you, Alexis, is like just hearing like your journey and the connections that you've made and the people that you spoke to. Would you describe yourself as a people person?
Yeah, definitely. I can. So I'm a BAFTA member, and one of my goals every time I go to any of the social things, regardless of if it's film viewing or if it's a game social, is to just talk to 3 strangers. And I have zero problem doing that. And it's just something I've learned over time. I think also it helps being Northern, because everyone in London, if a stranger talks to you in London, it's a bit crazy, right? You don't know what you're going to get on the other side of it. But they're kind of like safe environments, because ultimately you're kind of there for the same thing. So there's always something, a conversational piece that can draw you back. And it's good practice, because you probably never, especially the film viewings, you're probably never going to see that person again. Even if you felt like you made like a bubble, it's all good. It's chill. No one died.
Okay, no, that's good to hear because it struck me that you might be, and I know sometimes in games there are people who might not describe themselves as that, but then need to do the kind of thing that you might describe as a people person type behavior. But the talk to X number of new people in the space that's an interesting challenge for anyone to take on for those kind of situations like that.
I recommend it. It didn't come naturally.
Mm.
It's something you practice. Everyone practices it. Yeah, I recommend it. Even at school, just people you don't naturally talk to, just go
Yeah,
have a chat and see what they're up to.
yeah, recommend that. And because we usually ask people like, where can people find you online? And you said you're not online. So is it kind of a sort of wrap up also interesting to know, not even necessarily why you decided to do that, because I think I can guess, but just has that had any impact in terms of how you do your role? And then what do you do? Is there literally nothing online that you do? Are you completely like closed off? So if people do want to connect with you, they meet you at an event and connect with you, what do you say?
Typically now, because a lot of events are like, so I just point them to LinkedIn. If people want me, they can ping me there,
Okay.
including students as well. I actually don't mind being contacted. I think basically social media is pretty bad right now, right?
Yeah, I've heard, I've heard this.
Someone might have said something somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, I've been working in the space for so long. Like, I've been in games for 15 years. I've probably not been working actively with social media for about 3 or 4, especially during the pandemic. I think the pandemic is kind of what broke me. I was like, I can't do this professionally because it's bad enough personally being in these spaces, but I think professionally speaking, there's no like, you can't really escape it. It's you're 8 hours a day and you're online and people are just really depressed and sad, and that will obviously rub off on you. So that was when I kind of spoke to Chucklefish, and they were like, well, we'll just change your roles. You've got other skills, which was really, really nice that they wanted to keep me. It wasn't, I thought it would be the end of my time there, basically. I just said I couldn't do it anymore. And they were like, no, we still want you. So just switch up, which is really
Mm.
lovely. But genuinely, I've used the extra time to like, I'm reading more. I've gotten back into physical painting. I've caught up on the shows that I wanted to catch up on that people have been recommending me for years. So it's not all been like creative. Some of it's been just chilling out. Play a lot more D&D now as well, which is quite fun. Yeah, I think just extra time to do other things. I've really realized just how dependent I became on my phone when I stopped using it as much. And I recommend not using it as much, just in general.
There you go. All right, that sounds like a really positive outcome from that. So, all right, LinkedIn's the one then. So, yeah, Alexis, thank you for that. Thank you for joining us and spending some time sharing your journey with ourselves and our audience as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been lovely and nice to talk to you for an extended period as well, Tazzy.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, thank you for people listening. If you made it this far, you must have enjoyed what you heard. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can hear more of these types of conversations on our podcast. You can also go back and listen to the other 202, 4, 3, whatever, 200 plus episodes. I don't know why, just maths escaped me for a second. Also, give us a 5-star rating and review because that helps us reach new listeners and fans of story discussions as we try and create more impact with the discussions that we do have on this podcast. We're also story creators, so you can discover our manga universe online. We have our latest release, Origins Against All Odds, available online, and we are currently redoing the website, completely redoing it. So bear with us in these coming months as we reshape that, and then you can share that and you can see the My Matter universe in its, I'd say, full glory. You can also join our Studio 77 Discord, which is itself going to go through some changes. So, but you can still join it, chat with us, be part of the My Matter community. We're going to use it this year to talk more about like upcoming projects and sort of behind the scenes on things. And you can meet other people who enjoy doing similar things to what you might enjoy. You can also take part in the Do I Look Like a Gamer video game representation campaign. It's our yearly initiative for inclusion and diversity in the video games industry and culture. We've got a bunch of plans for the year as we do. So we're starting with the 40 Players and Makers photo shoot. So potentially you could be involved in that. So you can go to looklikeagamer.com. We've got a bunch of events and appearances. So places you'll be able to find us throughout the year. We also release new episodes of the podcast on Thursdays, and they include creator interviews like the one you've been listening to, video game discussions, and deep dives into stories across pop culture. And you can always give us a shout directly. Our correct email address is studio77@mymatter.com, and our website with links to subscribe is mymatter.com/storyxstory. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, we do not condone piracy. Unless it gets you on the show, then it's A-okay. Take care, everyone.